some sort of charitable organization that's doing us some sort of favor in terms of giving us these services. It's actually services that we're paying for, and those services need to be delivered as per what you'd pay to a normal business person if you had required those services, and we need to hold them accountable like that, if you know what I mean. So when it's coming down to the issues of service delivery, what we see the norm is that no, phone the e-services or complain to this number and do all of that. However, when we look at why do we have so many water leaks, you'd see that we've got an aging infrastructure. If you look at why our parks derelict, it's because our society is not normalized and we don't feel safe enough to use those parks. So all of these questions need to arise, and that arises through activism, not just through individuals complaining about a particular issue that they might have in the area. You know, so when we look at our roads and our streets and we start looking at all of these things, and you see that we haven't had resurfacing in the past 40 years. Why is that? Why was there no proper development plan? What's happening? You know, so all we see is municipalities and government per se putting band-aids on problems when and where they arise, but there's no long-term plan in terms of how do we actually start developing our wards and uplifting it in terms of empowerment, in terms of roads, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of all of these things. And that's where activism comes to the fore. So what we're pushing for right now is that every single area, and not based on wards, but based on voting districts, need to start having ratepayers associations attached to them to speak on behalf of the communities that live in that particular voting district.
I think you raise a very important point here, where we know in the past these ratepayers associations featured very, very prominently as a link between the residents of the area and the powers that be. And this has actually died down, and to revive this obviously makes a lot of sense, Imtiaz.
No, absolutely. I mean, if we're not discussing things as community and we're leaving it up to the councillors or one or two leaders within the community, then the situation arises whereby you're not being covered with the issues that you might be facing. And as collectives, we are saying that meetings need to happen. It needs to happen once a week. And yes, you're going to get the person that says, you know what, it's not my problem, I'm not going to deal with it, they're not going to attend. But ultimately, when they do have a problem, then they come to these meetings and then it starts getting addressed. Because speaking to the right people about what you want is very important, and that's the key. So you cannot go to SAPS and complain about a park that's derelict. It doesn't work. So what we're saying is that as much as we have crime meetings in our areas, and we should be having them at least once a month to discuss the issues of crime, but back to back, we should be discussing service delivery and issues that ratepayers face on a daily basis. And then how do we now move forward with regard to accountability and getting people involved? So we've called upon all areas to say, start your ratepayers association. If you don't have one, ask us, and we'll inform you how to form them and what's the agenda of a particular ratepayers association. And we all need to start speaking the same language, because what we noticed is that if you go into different areas, I'm not going to pick on race or particular affluency of type of area or that kind of thing. The norm is generally across the board, all areas face the same thing. But the processes of divide and conquer is there. So if everyone's divided and we don't clearly understand that all of us have the exact same issue, then it's not a big problem, so to speak. But what we're seeing is that as we're starting to communicate with different ratepayer organizations, you see the issues are exactly the same. So this is what we're challenging at the moment. I mean, currently there's a bylaw that's being proposed to be passed, and there's a recommendation to move using open spaces. It used to be 28 days, and that's a temporary thing in any calendar year, right? So it's not 28 consecutive days, it's 28 days throughout the year. There's a move to turn that into 52 days, but the recommendation is at the will of the head of management of land use management, they can extend it indefinitely. But if you're looking at it in terms of paper and you're not understanding the implications of that, it actually means that municipality can use any open space and put in a transit camp or whatever it is that they want to do in that space, and community can do absolutely nothing about it. So we go backwards then, and we say, when you started these transit camps or these emergency camps or whatever it is, there were supposed to be KPIs in terms of ETA, Transport Authority, Health Department. And the most concerning one for us is that, have you upped the policing? Have you done that as due diligence? No, it hadn't been done in the first place, and it was never being done correctly. And now all of a sudden you move to make it a permanent thing, and you still haven't addressed the underlying issues that were causing issues in the beginning.
Yes, Imtiaz. And I think also why activism is so important at this point in time is to formalize the structure and also at the same time, just to understand, and perhaps, Imtiaz, you can shed some light on this. How much recognition do the authorities or the powers that be give to organizations like ratepayers organizations?
To answer that question is the same as saying, you know what, why don't we as individuals complain on our own behalf as individuals to municipality about a major burst water pipe on a very prominent street? And that would just go by the wayside, right? But if you mobilize an entire community to say that this thing has been here forever, I mean, digging up holes to fix water pipes is an issue all over the Old Port area currently. And we see that they dig it up, they repair the pipe, and within 2 days, that exact same spot is leaking exactly the same time again. So it's basically putting band-aids on all of these things. And we now say, okay, if the person that's affected directly, meaning it's right in front of your shop or your house, and you complain about it, what would be the difference if an entire community complains about it? Because we all use the same street, we use the same road, we drive on it. It's a mess all over the place. So there's no backfill. The tar takes forever to come through. All of those issues need to be identified. So you as an owner of a property would say that, you know what, I never had water. I complained that I didn't have water. I now have water. But you're not looking at the adjacent issues of when did the repair get done? How did it get done? Did they actually do it properly? Is the road surfaced properly again? Those things are not being addressed. So when we're mobilizing communities, it's important for us to have a great backing. I mean, we put out Google forms and we get 6,000 or 7,000 signatures on it to say that something needs to be done about the roads and the water infrastructure in Overport. And then you get someone that's actually listening because now you're speaking to votes.
Mm. Now, just as far as community activism is concerned, is there a level of apathy on the part of communities to get involved and to be activists?
I think, I always say this. It's basically we're all on the same ship, and the ship has a leak on the bow, and everyone else on the other end of the ship is saying it's not my problem. Ultimately, it's going to come down to you, right? So, yes, there are activists in the area, and the only time we see, I mean, we call it apathy, but ultimately it's human nature to only deal with something that's a problem to you. And we can't overlook that fact, right? But I'm saying right now the issues are far greater, and majority of the community have issues around everything that's happening in and around our areas. I mean, I can't remember the last time when my streets were de-weeded, so to speak, or sprayed for weeds. That doesn't happen anymore. Our street sweeping is gone. It doesn't happen anymore. Why are these things happening?
Well,
So who asks these questions? Can we ask it as individuals? No, we have to ask it as associations or organizations.
well, just Jazakallah for that, and I must say, quite interesting. Obviously, an area or an aspect that one needs to consider very, very carefully, and otherwise, we're just going to be having these ongoing problems, and all we're going to do is we're going to belong to community WhatsApp groups and complain, complain, and complain.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Jazakallah for that and for your time with us this morning, Imtiaz, and inshallah, looking forward to next week once again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Imtiaz Sayed joining us this morning, eThekweni Secure Chairperson, Service Delivery and Activism. And these are issues that impact on us on a day-to-day basis. And if there are any comments, remember our WhatsApp line 061 766 0355, our studio calling number 011 680 0355. We're also on Twitter on @Salam Media, Instagram on @Salam Media on air, and also the other platforms that you can listen to us. Now we are heading for the news at 9 in a few seconds. Coming back after the news, we will be talking with the likes of the Association of Muslim Accountants and Lawyers, Amal, talking about a webinar, Protection of Personal Information Act. Also talking with the former DA Gauteng leader John Moody. And later on in the program, we'll be talking with Dr. Ibrahim Harvey, a political writer and analyst and an author. So quite a bit to come right until around 10 a.m. But for now, it's just gone 9 a.m. and it's time for the news.
أنت السميع البصير العليم. لا 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 ما لي رب سواه رب السماء العظيم يغفر لمن عصاه وهو الحليم الرؤوف. يا الله رحمن للبرايا غفار للخطايا ورجائه وهدايا. يا الله ارحم ضعفي وحالي فاق الذنب احتمالي فاغفر لي يا ذا الجلال. الله يا الله أنت العزيز الغفور الرحيم. يا الله أنت القدوس السلام الكريم. يا الله أنت العزيز الغفور الرحيم. يا الله أنت القدوس السلام الكريم.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
It's 9 a.m. and these are your headlines for this Wednesday morning. Emirates is set to resume flights to Durban from tomorrow, and the Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has